Hello, I'm Dr. Fred Travis. I'm Director of the Center for Brain, Consciousness, and Cognition. I look at brain functioning to understand conscious functioning. Yes, we did some work with Olympic athletes in Norway. We looked at world-class athletes who won gold medals in Olympics, National Games, or World Games for at least 3 seasons consecutively, compared them with competitors who did not consistently place. And so we're looking at what is it that allows one person to have that extra edge over the others. Because physical training is very similar, but there's something which allows the gold medal winners to stand out. Well, what we found is a number of differences between the world-class athletes and the control athletes. The world-class athletes, the way their brain was functioning was distinctly different. It was more integrated. It was functioning more as a whole. So here we have a picture of the brain. The brain's looking at me. These numbers here, 1, 2, and 3, are the 3 major components, brain components of the motor system. This line here is separating the back of the brain, which is where you have sensory information. This is where you see the world, from the front of the brain. And the front of the brain has 2 components. One is what sets up our motor performance, decides the sequential steps that you'll do. This other part of the frontal cortex is labeled CEO, which is not a neuroscience term. It means Chief Executive Officer. And that's what this part of the brain does. It gets information from all other parts of the brain, puts it together, and sends it out. This part of the brain is also called the prefrontal cortex. It's the front of the frontal area. Now what happens in alpha activity is this part of the brain is resting. It's allowing all the other processes to go on. And so in terms of a motor performance, it's allowing the motor system to unfold as it's been practiced, through practice, been able to do. And this lets us understand why motion might break down. Because you look at people in warm-up and they hit just one good ball after another. This motor system has been trimmed and has been refined through hours and hours of practice. What happens is the CEO can get in the way. This part of your brain, this is what creates all of this thinking, doubting, evaluating, questioning. That's what this part of the brain is for. It's like the boss. It's always to ask the big question. By analogy, imagine the boss is the coach on the ball team. And now what would happen if someone starts to swing and the coach says, "Swing through the ball"? It'll stop the motion. This is what's happening by analogy in the brain, as if in the process of starting the task, if the frontal lobes gets in there and say, okay, is my bat high, is it low, how's my grip, where's my weight, I have to keep my weight on my back foot, it's actually going to break down this smooth outflow. And on the other side, when the person is in the zone, what is happening is the CEO is not interfering. It's just allowing this overlearned process to unfold. And what seems to mark the great athlete is they're able to do that. Somehow they're able to get out of their head. They're just able to let the motion unfold. So let us think, could you train an athlete to do this? Can you give them some techniques to actually have the frontal lobes doing something so that they can just allow the motor system to unfold, and so they could get that feeling? Imagine how valuable that would be. So here we are in the 21st century. Is the whole emphasis of training going to change from body to mind? We'll have to see what actually unfolds. But what athletes are saying is it's the mental game. Yogi Berra said 90% of the game is mental and the other half is physical. He was getting at that because he saw great players, physically strong, who had practiced the motion, they had the motion down, but what made the great player great was just their mental power. And it's not so much only the ability to focus, because that's important, but it's the ability to use the brain the way it's been designed to be used. So we can understand the effect of postseason play in terms of how the brain is functioning. Because we're talking about the frontal area. What can happen is if you're under stress, the frontal area takes over. And so what there is this fine line between challenge and stress. Challenge is good. Challenge is what makes you really push as far and as hard as you can, and that's when your performance is best. Stress is when it's over the top. And what you need is a way to strengthen the brain so that you buffer the effects of stress. What happens in postseason, the ante is a little bit higher. Here it is, the 7th game in the World Series. Here we are playing your arch rivals. The stress is very high. And so the CEO, the boss of the brain, may think, I have to take over now. And so those times, particularly some technique to just allow the frontal areas to be active but not being involved in the motor performance, in the response, is what will be very successful.